Good morning, I'm Mauice Barratt. I've got a Lockdown 2021 for you this morning. I want to talk about fear, and I've called it Fear is the Key. It's the key to many things, and it's not always bad. Fear's not always a bad thing. Fear is the key to control human beings. There's no doubt about that. Well, we keep the speed limit because of fear of the fines. Many Christians speed when they know there's no speed trap around. It's really hard to have the right sort of fear. But they'll slow down when there's a speed trap because they fear the fine. People don't steal for fear of going to prison, not that they don't covet things. We don't commit adultery. Many people don't commit adultery because of the shame of being caught. Or they don't want to lose their marriage. Not that they don't lust and would like to commit adultery, but the fear keeps them on the straight and narrow, and that's a good thing. Because we all have a fear, a pull towards rebellion. I mean, it was Eve that disobeyed God and rebelled against God, and it's in our DNA. We're just born like that. It's not our fault. We're all drawn towards error and rebellion, if we're honest. Natural to have our own way, the way we want it. Nobody wants anyone to control them, the government or any authority to rule over us, but God's ordained authority and we should fear them, and it's for our protection unless it goes against God. And that's why God sent his Son, so that we could be free and have the DNA and the character of Christ and learn to walk in freedom and faith instead of being ruled by fear and rebellion. That's the problem. Fear can be used for good or evil. Fear of walking too close to a cliff is good. But the world's been put in fear to control. I can see with this pandemic, and the agenda has been for many years with the terrorism after 9/11, fear was used to control and take our freedom away, and that's not good. Evil men will always use fear to control the weak. We understand that. I've been reading a book on vaccines, very interesting if you care to look at it. Dissolving Illusions by Suzanne Humphreys and Raman Bistrink. It's very, very good. It explains about vaccines and how many times the government and the pharmaceutical companies have lied to us. But that's just my interest that I'm reading it, but there was a quote in it about fear that was really good. It's a quote from Henry Lloyd Machen, and it says this: "The one permanent emotion of the inferior man is fear. Fear of the unknown, the complex, the inexplicable. What he wants above everything else is safety." You know, people will surrender so many rights and even the freedom to feel safe. That's why terrorism and pandemics and those things are used to give up our rights and to lose our freedom. If you can't see that, how the whole world's been manipulated over the last 12, 14 months, then I think you're being deceived personally. Let me read from a United Nations website. Maybe you'll see nothing wrong with it, but those who are discerning will understand what I'm saying. This is what it says. This is one of the high people up in it. "This pandemic has devastated our world. But the surest way to end COVID-19 is also the fairest: vaccines for all. We need a plan to get the vaccines to every country and every community. The General Assembly can mobilise action across the world. That's why I'm working with all our members, the World Health Organization and the entire United Nations family to address this pandemic. Vaccines are only effective if enough people get them. We are only as safe as the most vulnerable amongst us." You make out of that what you will. But fear is the opposite of faith. So what should we fear and what should we believe and act upon? Well, I haven't much time, but Matthew 10:28 gives us a really good line to decide upon. And it says this, don't fear them which can kill the body. So don't fear disease, don't fear the government, don't fear being beheaded, don't fear being put in prison, don't fear them that can damage or kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. That's where the real fear comes from, and the opposite is to trust God and have faith. Well, personally, I don't take any vaccines. I've not taken any vaccines for 30 years. I go to Africa and India and the Philippines, and I never take vaccines for yellow fever, typhoid, malaria. I trust God. I believe that the Holy Ghost in me is enough immunisation. And so I wouldn't take vaccines voluntarily to protect me from disease. And I've lived like this for a long time. But you decide for yourself. But we shouldn't fear going to prison for assembling of ourselves together. The Bible clearly tells us, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. So you may have to meet in secret. And I trust that Christians will still meet and have fellowship, because it's a commandment, it's not a suggestion. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. So we should fear to disobey God and his instructions. I fear to hear the words, depart from me, you that work iniquity, I never knew you. I fear to produce wood, hay and stubble instead of gold, silver and precious stones. Many things we should fear and many things we should have faith for. But think about it, the time's gone. Have a wonderful week and be people of faith, not fear. Decide what you're going to fear and what you're going to have faith for, and act upon it, because what's not of faith is sin. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. See you next week for another study.